Welcome to part 2 of Lessons Learned in Loss. Y'all, let me first say, first episode, the response of compassion, of community, of girl, we're in it with you, I'm praying for you. It was overwhelming. It literally was overwhelming. And if I'm honest, I cringed for like a week straight after releasing that first episode, because I'm like, I am letting so many people into such a vulnerable, intimate, personal space of my life, you know? But you all made it so worth it, because you literally, people I knew and people I didn't know, sent DMs and messages and text messages and FaceTime calls of, I know what that feels like, and I just want you to know I'm in it with you. I'm praying with you. I'm praying for you. You don't have to feel this way. You don't have to feel like you're walking this by yourself. There were people who sent me cash apps, and that episode wasn't for pity. Like, you know, God has been faithful to me. He's taken care of me. But people sent me cash apps, Apple Pay, Zelles, like, hey, pay a bill with this or do. And I'm like, what? Like, so it challenged so many areas of my life, because it challenged even pride. When people start sending me money, I'm like, I hope I didn't come across as like a pity case, because I'm fine, you know. But then it was like, no, Tenisha, people just want to be a blessing, and let them do that, because God knows you've sown seeds throughout the years, you know, into people. I'm a sower, have always been that, you know, and never announced my seed. So I, you know, even in those moments where people started sowing into me, it was just like, that's what seed does. You once planted, you're still planting, and it's just coming back up. So allow people to bless you. So I just want to say to the lovies all over this country, thank you, thank you, thank you for your prayers, again, for the community that I felt, for the compassion that I felt. I was just overwhelmed. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So since releasing that episode, so much has happened. And if you aren't sure what I'm talking about, the context of what I'm speaking of, go back and catch the first episode. This is part 2, Lessons Learned in Loss. And this is going to be a shorter episode, because I think I covered a good bit of things that I've learned and things that I have been feeling and all of that in part 1. Part 2, I'm just going to cover 2 major things that I have learned in this season of my life. The first one, I just kind of touched on it, but the word of God is true. We really do overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the words of our testimony. And I have not always lived a transparent life. I'm very private in what I share, what I disclose. And I covered that in the first episode, how one of my godmothers told me, like, no one cares what you're going through or care about what you're going through after you come out of it and you're fine. People want to know in real time, what are you doing to keep your head above water? How are you keeping the faith? How are you keeping the hope? How are you continuing to believe that God can, even when he hasn't just yet? People want to know that, you know? So she challenged me in a way not to be as private about certain things, because again, I'll go through everything by myself privately and no one will ever know. But then it's like, who are you helping in those instances, you know? So after releasing the first episode, I told you I was literally cringing. Like, after I put it out there and I'm getting all of these messages of encouragement and support, I was just like, what have I done? Like, it just felt so personal and intimate. Like, I'm all crying on the camera. Like, you know, I'm just like, what in the world? I just let the whole world into what has gone on in my life the past year, or an aspect of it. But you know what? It was, number one, it was freeing, because again, the amount of community, the amount of support that I received was so beautiful. And then It wasn't until after I shared verbally, openly, publicly with the world about the season that the Lord had me in. It wasn't until then that, guys, I started to become flooded with job offers. Flooded with job offers. And we have some updates, okay? We have some updates.
Oh, what? Wait! Huh? Girl.
So I started to think, sometimes we think like the holdup is one thing in an area, when the Lord is like, no, I'm not waiting on that. This right here is what I'm waiting on. And in my life, I've always struggled. I'm going to speak in past tense because I'm delivered, I'm set free. But in past tense, I've always struggled with pride. So this was really big for me to share that I have been struggling, for me to share that, I've been in an uncomfortable season. That was a big deal for someone like me who has always liked to have this picture perfect life, So I'm over here thinking God is waiting on one thing, when the Lord the whole time was waiting on me to open my mouth and let people know, testify about how I have continued to serve him, continue to show up, continue to worship, continue to praise, even when I didn't know how a bill was going to get paid when I got home after church, or I didn't know, what was going to happen. Like, he wanted me to testify and share that with the world. And the second I did it, even though my flesh was still like, what have I done? The second I did it, all of these opportunities started chasing me down. So I want you to even think about that in your own life. What are some areas that you're waiting on God for? Some things you're believing him for? Could it be that it's time for you to lay your pride aside and ask for help? Could it be that it's time for you to lay your pride aside and go help someone else, or go forgive someone, go ask for forgiveness? There's so many different things we think is the holdup of certain areas of our life. And the Lord is like, no, I'm actually not waiting on that. I'm waiting on this right here. I'm waiting on you to walk in humility. I'm waiting on you to open your mouth and testify. I'm waiting on you to go grab the next sister out of the cave and pull her out. I'm waiting on you to go grab the next brother out of hiding and pull him out. I'm waiting on you to go minister to your bloodline. I'm waiting on you. That's what I'm waiting on. And then when you do that, then we can move forward. I have shared on Facebook before this status years ago. I said, God is not like our 5th grade math teacher. He's not going to pass us to the next grade just because he's tired of looking at us. We will repeat the same tests over and over and over and over again until we understand and learn the lesson from it. So many times we are in seasons for far too long. We've overstayed certain seasons simply because God is looking for us to master a certain area. He's looking for us to get something specifically from this particular season, and we fail to open our eyes to get it. And in this, I'm not saying that this is the only answer, because I've learned so much, but I do believe a part of this season in my life was God stripping me of more pride, saying, hey, you do need help. So why haven't you opened your mouth and shared that? You have come out of a low place. So why aren't you telling people? You're dressed up. Yes, you look pretty. You still show up to church. You still show up to events. You still show up to family functions, but nobody knows what's going on in your life because you have failed to open up that part of your life, So though it was uncomfortable, though it was a little bit of a struggle, though I was cringing about telling the whole world what was going on in this current season or past season in my life, I do believe it was the very thing that the Lord was waiting on, because it wasn't until I released that episode. Now, I had been unemployed for a whole year, but it wasn't until I released that episode that all of these opportunities started flooding. So, drum roll. I have a job. After an entire year of not having income, I have landed a role. I won't go into details about where or for who, but I have landed a role that has come with some beautiful amazing perks and opportunities for me to be in some great rooms, to be around great people of great caliber. So I'm just grateful to God. I don't know how long I'll be in this role. I don't know what the Lord has for me. I don't know if this is, temporary or something more permanent. I'm not sure, which is why I'm a little hesitant to share where and all of that. But I just appreciate the prayers of the saints, because the Bible says the prayers of the righteous, they availeth much. And sometimes we are waiting on God to do things according to our timeline. And God is like, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. I see the full picture. You only see your scope. You only see, your point of view. And I see the big picture. So I'm so grateful, and I wanted to share that with you all, that I do have a job now, and I'm going to just make sure that I remember who the source is, which leads me to a next lesson that I learned. I learned in this season that God is my source. Jobs, people, relationship, all of those things are resources. But there is one source. And that is something that I'm going to have to be reminded of over and over and over again by my own self, just reminding myself, don't get attached to the money. Don't get attached to looking at numbers, thinking, okay, with this amount, I can do this and I can do that and I can do that. Because if you've not learned nothing in this last season, God math, we talk about girl math, but God math is 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. God math is 2 + 2 equals 4 million. He's a multiplier. He will multiply whatever you put in his hands. So that is something that I am going to just keep at the forefront of my mind. With this job and the next opportunity and the next opportunity, you give God what you have and watch him multiply it. But don't get caught up in trying to make sense of things, trying to make sense of numbers, trying to make sense of salaries, don't get caught up in that. Because if you've not learned anything else, Tenisha, you have learned that God can do a whole lot with a little. He fed thousands with 2 fish and 5 loaves. He can do a whole lot with a little. The key is you got to commit that little to him. So that's something else that I learned. And then lastly, this is a big one because I am still on this journey. So again, the first lesson in part 2 is we really do overcome by our testimony. So don't be afraid to share what it is you're walking through, the lessons God is trying to teach you. Don't be afraid. Don't allow pride to win when you feel like you're in low seasons. Now, I'm not saying go blast it all over Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Threads and all of that. Find trusted sources to share what it is that the Lord is teaching you and the Lord is walking you through, because you'd be surprised at how many people you can help just by testifying. Well, hey y'all, this is hard, but I still trust God. This is difficult. This hurts. This is painful, but I still trust God. Don't be afraid to invite people into your journey. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, or I can't say I learned it, but I just had to be reminded of it, that God is the source. God is the source, and he's a multiplier. So he'll multiply whatever you put in his hands, whether it's your gifts, your money, your family, whatever it is. If you commit it to the Lord, he'll expand it. He'll make it great. And then this last thing, and that will conclude this part 2 of the lessons I've learned in loss. The last thing, and I'm still on this journey, being without my career for the past year forced me to think about what's in my house. It forced me to think about the gifts that I have on the inside of me, because I was not sure when a job was going to come through. I was not sure if a job would ever come through. You know why? Because I do know people personally who told me I got laid off And what I did not know was that was God's way of transitioning me out of the workforce. And I became an entrepreneur after that. So I wasn't sure if the Lord was forcing me out of corporate so that he could start something new in me, you know? So it forced me to work the gifts that were on the inside of me. So there were so many business plans I wrote down, some things I'm still developing that will be out, if not the end of this year, the top of next year, because it forced me to look on the inside of me and say, Tenisha, what are you good at? What can you do? What has the Lord placed on the inside of you? And he's waiting on you to develop it. He's waiting on you to bless the world with the gifts he's placed on the inside of you. I think we forget that we have all we need on the inside of us. So instead of waiting on these companies to give us a handout, what's in your house? Not your physical building. What's in your house? What gifts has the Lord given you? And it's time for you to walk in them. It's time for you to execute them. It's time for you to jump out there on faith and work the gift. So that's what I leave with you today, lovies. What's in your house? What can you work with? What has God given you? And I'm still on this journey because I'm very gifted. So there's a lot of things that I can do well, but I don't ever want to be busy doing everything. I want to only do what the Lord instructs me to do. So we're on this journey together of figuring out what's in my house. And if I were to never walk into an office again, what has God given me on the inside of me that I can work and be a blessing to this world? Thank you so much, lovies, for rocking with your girl. I love you. And until next time, blessed.